Hello, everybody, and welcome to our very first webinar on illegal dumping. And thank you very much for turning up to this webinar. And in particular, thanks to our three presenters who have put in so much effort into what I'm sure will be a really interesting discussion. So our three speakers today come from a range of different parts of the legal profession, including Moses, who's a consultant, Moses Jaokoo, Asli Abbasi, who's a researcher and a translator, and Taimur Khan, who is a legal practitioner and partner of the firm AJ Khan. I will start by just doing a few administrative tasks. Just want to make sure that all our listeners can hear us. So if we go down to if you can all see the attendees part of the column, can you see the raise your hand button for the people who are listening online? Can you press the raise your hand button just so we know we can hear you, or to type something into the chat function at the bottom of the screen? I'm not sure if people can hear us. Just a sec. On the attendees part of the screen, if you could, it looks like I'm just going to turn on all the microphones. So are there other attendees on the line? If you could just let us know if you can hear us. It's showing here that, oh, good. I think I saw a raised hand from Joanna. Great, excellent, thank you. I'll just turn off. So can you hear us fine?
Yes.
Great, thank you. I'll just mute your mic now to reduce any feedback. And Jing Peng, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear.
Excellent, great. So I'll just mute your mic as well. And we know that our attendees can hear us. I'm not sure if Maneka, can you hear us? Well, we'll go ahead then. And first of all, a big thank you to Moses, who introduced this idea of having a topic on illegal dumping. He approached me a few months ago now saying that there's this key issue in Kenya, the issue that he will be focusing on, and what can we as the early career group do to address it. And that's through our discussions came up with the idea that we'd have a webinar, as our first webinar topic would be the issue of illegal dumping. So I had a chat to Moses on the phone about 10 minutes ago. He's on the way. But to start with, I think we'll go straight to Asli. The way we'll be organizing this is that we'll have three presenters, and each presenter will talk for about 10 to 15 minutes. And at the end of each presenter, there'll be time for one question, and we'll then move on to the next presenter, and again, the same thing of one question after each presenter, and at the very end have a discussion that you can pose questions to all of our speakers, and it'll be really interesting to see the overlaps and comparisons between the three jurisdictions that we have today. So Kenya, Iran, and Pakistan. So before I pass over the controls to Asli, I'd just like to introduce you to her. And we're just really happy to have Asli as a presenter because she's written and published in a range of different areas. And there's so many that I'll have to have a look to, because I can't remember them all, from international law to human rights law, international and Islamic criminal law, and international and comparative environmental law. And her publications focus on issues ranging from nuclear law, water law, to the German criminal code and education, science and culture. Her qualifications include an LLB from Shiraz University and an environmental law LLM from Shahid Beheshti University. And she's also currently completing her PhD there. So I'd invite you to give a very big, warm round of applause to Asli. And I'm just about to change presenter to her now.
Thanks. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Asli. I still can't see your screen. So we'll just,
You can see?
I can't see your PowerPoint. So I'll give it a few more seconds. It might.
Okay.
On my controls, it says it's showing screen, but I can't quite see it. What I'll do is I'll change it back to me and then hand it back to you, and that should resolve the issue. Still not seeing your PowerPoint. What I might do is I'll try again to go out again and change it back to you. If that doesn't work, are you happy for me, because I've got a copy of your slides here, I'll just run it from this side? Because we can hear you loud and clear.
I think it's better.
Okay, just a sec. So I'm just going to try one more time to see if we can see your actual screen, but if that doesn't work.
Okay.
Yeah, for some reason it's not showing. So I'll just control the slides from here and just let me know when you'd like me to move on to another slide.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Here we go.
Okay. Can I start now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Asli Abbasi from Iran. It's my pleasure to be invited as a speaker to talk briefly about the important issue of illegal dumping in Iran. Before anything, I'd like to thank Dr. Michelle Lim for her valuable efforts to hold this useful webinar. Illegal dumping in Iran as a country willing to reach its developmental goal is a major problem which leads to many concerns, especially with regard to public health and life quality. Illegal dumping has serious environmental and social impacts and is a considerable financial burden for government, business, and the community as a whole. Illegal dumping or unlawful disposal of waste in unauthorized open areas is especially a very critical problem within Iran, which includes household waste, medical waste, construction and demolition debris, abandoned vehicles, parts, and tires. The main reasons, could you please go to part 3, slide 3?
Yep.
Thanks. The main reasons of illegally dumping waste in Iran, slide 3 please. Thanks. The main reasons of illegally dumping waste in Iran are as follows. 1. Disinclination to spend time or money or effort for properly disposing waste. 2. Lack of convenient disposal sites, especially in poor areas such as outskirts of big cities. 3. Ignorance of consequences of illegal dumping, which is mainly due to the priority of economic goals and development over environment. 4. Improper laws and lax enforcement, out-of-date regulations, and time-consuming law review process make it difficult to probably handle environmental issues timely before they lead to wide crises such as the garbage catastrophe in northern parts of Iran. The region situated on the seaside of the Caspian Sea also lacks enforcement can be considered as another main factor, which is mainly due to inappropriate environmental management and lack of financial resources in a country mainly dependent on oil income and under international sanctions on its oil and gas export. The typical dump has, would you please go to slide 4?
Yeah.
Thanks. The typical dumpers in Iran are construction contractors, scrap collectors, and local residents and industry owners. The next subject is the effects of illegal dumping in Iran. Improper dumping pollutes natural habitats of wildlife and can lead to the death of fish, birds, and other animals. Some of the toxic waste are consumed by animals, and a huge part of toxic waste end up in water bodies, which becomes dangerous to aquatic life. This leads to more concerns about water crisis in Iran. Iran is situated in a low precipitation area, therefore low precipitation combined with water scarcity and low pollution water pollution could make the ground for wide-ranging environmental tsunami. When it rains, as in July 2050, illegally dumped rubbish can impact proper drainage of runoff, making areas more susceptible to flooding. When waste blocks creeks and drainage basins, the flood of 19 July 2015 has caused widespread damage and destroyed infrastructure in at least 307 villages in 6 provinces of Iran, and at least 11 people were killed. Illegal dumping also poses serious health risk. Sites used for illegal dumping are mainly located in poor areas, which are accessible to people, especially children, who are vulnerable to the physical and chemical hazards posed by waste. Rodents, insects, and other vermin attracted to illegal dump sites may also pose health risks. Illegal dump sites can provide an ideal breeding ground for insects, rodents, and the vermin which can carry diseases. Ironically, Tehran, the capital of Iran, is called the parading scene of the mice. According to the statements of the head of environmental main office of Tehran municipality, there are about 50 million to 60 million mice in Tehran, which for eliminating them, 500 kilograms of poison are used monthly in Tehran district. Would you please go to the next slide?
This one?
No, the next one.
This one.
Again. Next one. The next one. After the break. It's the parading scene of mice in Tehran.
Okay, yeah.
Reg
Just a photo of
reg
the.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
To tackle the problem in Iran in 2002, the law on waste management was passed by the parliament under, yes, this one, the parading scene of mice in Tehran. Would you please go to the next? Yes, thanks. To tackle the problem in Iran in 2002, the law on waste management was passed by the parliament under Article 1 to fulfill the 50th principle of the Islamic Republic of Iran constitutional law, and in order to protect the environment from harmful effects of waste materials, or ministries whose ability to act require a mention of their names, and all judicial and natural persons should observe regulations and policies ordained in the present act. Along with it, there are other legal instruments referring to the protection of environment in a wider context, which include the proper handling of waste. After the Islamic Revolution in 1979, the government enshrined environmental protection in the Constitution. Article 50 of the Iranian Constitution reads, "The preservation of the environment in which the present as well as the future generations have a right to flourishing social existence is regarded as a public duty in the Islamic Republic. Economic and other activities that inevitably involve pollution of the environment or cause irreparable damage to it are therefore forbidden." Other relevant regulations are as follows. Law of Forest Developmental Program 2004, also known as the Forest Program, which according to Article 61, municipalities and district councils of 3 provinces, Mazandaran, Gilan, and Golestan, the most affected areas by illegal dumping, are charged with the duty to provide a comprehensive waste management program. Therefore, the process of waste collection, recycling, waste and waste disposal will be done on the basis of environmental and technical methods. According to Article 688 of Islamic Penal Code of Iran, which reads, any act that is regarded as a threat to public health, such as illegal dumping of waste, polluting drinking waters, or distributing polluted drinking waters, and etc., is forbidden, and the offenders, unless punishable by more severe punishments under special laws, shall be sentenced to up to 1 year of imprisonment. Would you please go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Thanks. In this part, I will discuss the relevant organizational structure in Iran. In Iran, the Department of Environment, a governmental organization under the supervision of the President, has the main responsibilities for matters related to safeguarding the environment. Under its statute, and the main tasks of the department are as follows: protection of natural ecosystems, prevention of environmental damage and pollution, assessment of environmental impacts of developmental projects, continual supervision on use of environmental resources, and cooperation with other relevant bodies such as municipalities, city councils, Ministry of Agricultural, Jihad, Minister of Interior, Ministry of Industries and Mines in environmental related issues. After 2013 presidential election, the newly elected president has focused more on environmental related issues such as the drying of Urmia Lake, withdrawal in eastern, central, and southern provinces of Iran, unlawful possession of lands locating in national protected areas, which occurred during the presidency of ex-President Ahmadinejad. With regard to the issue of illegal dumping, the close cooperation and process of conciliation between municipalities and the Department of Environment led to some promising positive changes. For example, according to the report of the Department of Environment, activities 2013 and 2014, in order to handle the problem of illegal dumping in coastal cities, the Department of Environment and Ministry of Interior agreed to develop the comprehensive management program to be implemented in large cities and coastal areas by the relevant municipalities. Despite organizational structures provided according to the law, the problem continues to exist. Main factors which are affecting the situation are as follows. Would you please go to the next slide? Thanks. Rush for development without due considerations for environmental issues, international sanctions as a main factor which affects the budgetary decision-making in a country largely dependent on oil and gas export incomes, lack of expert and non-efficiency of governmental management system, which is actually mainly separated from NGOs and without considering civil society role in controlling the issue. Powerful private parties which are acting in field of industries and non-observance of environmental standards by them, which make the environment the most vulnerable victim of their profit-based approach. Would you please go to the next slide? Thanks. Here are some suggestions for prevention of illegal dumping in Iran. Using public education to familiarize people and industries with harmful effects of improperly disposed materials. 2. Cooperation among authorities, communities, and industry. 3. Active engagement of local authorities, industries, and locals to organize cleanup groups in each neighborhood known as usual illegal dumping sites. 4. Firm enforcement of environmental protection laws and regulations. 5. The establishment of mandatory waste collection program. 6. To set heavy fines for illegal disposal offenses. And 6, would you please go to the next slide? Thanks. Also, reward programs can effectively reduce illegal dumping in areas known for long-lasting illegal dumping. At the end, I present you a portrait of ugly truths, illegal dumping in Iran. Dr. Liam, would you please show the pictures?
Yeah. Do you want me to just keep showing the different pictures?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes. A portrait of ugly truths, illegal dumping in Iran.
Taken, so I think that's at the end of your slides. I'll just show that last one again.
Yes,
yeah.
Thanks. Thank you for your time.
And thank you very much, Asli. That was a really interesting presentation and raises a lot of interesting and also complex interacting issues of planning, and as well as what dumping is legal and illegal, to create this issue which isn't just an environmental but also very much a social and health issue. I know I've got a lot of questions, but I'll throw it out to the rest of the group. Anyone listening? With one question before we move on to Taimur. either, so I'll turn on everybody's microphone so you could just ask directly. Any questions for Asli? Well, while you're thinking, sorry, did someone have a question?
Yes, this is Johanna.
Yes, Johanna.
Thank you so much, Asli, for a great presentation. It was very interesting to listen to the situation in Iran.
I thank you too.
I just wondered if you have any example of legal case. Sorry, I was just wondering if there have been any legal cases in Iran concerning this issue, and in that case, how these what has the outcome been of these legal cases?
You mean at court?
Yes, exactly.
This is one of the reasons of improper laws and lax enforcement. There are no, I have searched and I didn't find anything regarding this case at the court.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Johanna. I'll next change presenter to Taimur. Taimur, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm trying to make you presenter. For some reason, oh, great. I can see your slides now. So thanks very much, Asli. And I imagine there'll be quite a few parallels in what Taimur's about to tell us. And Taimur, we're really glad to have a perspective from the legal profession. Taimur's a partner, AJ Khan Law Associate, and also has a lot of expertise in a wide range of areas, including corporate, constitutional, finance, and environmental law. He's formerly a consultant at the Pakistani Attorney General's, as well as being an editor of Environment Monitor, a leading environmental journal on preservation and protection issues with regard to the environment. He holds an LLB from Punjab University Law College and has a gold medal as part of his LLB. He holds an MBA in Banking and Finance from Allama Iqbal University and was awarded the Dean's Tuition Fellowship for the LLM program at the University of California, Los Angeles. So I'm sure you will all join me in welcoming Taimur for the perspective from Pakistan. Thank you, Taimur.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. I hope you can hear me before I start.
Loud and clear.
Okay, very good. First of all, I'd just like to start by saying that it is a pleasure to be a part of this webinar. And I would also like to acknowledge the efforts of Dr. Michelle in making this possible and in organizing this webinar, which I'm sure would not have been possible but for exchange of many emails going back and forth. So I'm going to be discussing three main issues in this segment. Firstly, I would want to walk everyone through some of the global perceptions, some of the problems that we are facing globally as to where we stand today, just to give a sort of a bigger frame picture. Second, I would like to talk about my country, Pakistan, and the sort of problem of illegal dumping that we have here. And third, I would like to talk about some of the legal cases, the jurisprudence which has been established pursuant to many judgments that have come around the clock. Now, the first slide, the picture you can see was taken some 5 years back. It's of Malaysia. There's an island, Langkawi, and it's beautiful. You can see the water is blue, and if you're just sprawling on one of those couches, beach couches, and you can see the sun on top of you, it is just an amazing view. And I'm sure all of the attendees and all of the people must be thinking how amazing it would be if they could be right there, right now. But unfortunately, I'm going to talk about garbage and trash. So if I could turn to the next slide. That would be great. Okay, so in terms of certain facts and figures, let me just briefly walk all of you through them. Climate change is a big issue. I think we're all guilty of methane emissions, black carbon from burning garbage at landfills. We happen to be a major player in the food security. I think a third of 40% of food is actually wasted on production, transportation, post-consumer space. We also have questions of resilience, that in terms of questions of how we are to plan for future, and in terms of the scarce resources of how we can manage things more efficiently. Recently, there's also a rise of plastics in ocean, which is also a big issue and concern. Overall, I think by now there's almost about 4 billion tons of waste that gets put in the environment each year, and half of it represents household waste. Now, in developing countries, the collection rate usually isn't 100% as is the case in developed countries. The collection rate is almost about 30 to 40%. And out of that 30 to 40%, 70% of that collected waste actually finds its way in landfills. And those are not even proper landfills. There's a properly open dumping sites that haven't been buried properly. So as such, we have been guilty of, I would say, emitting 1 billion tons of CO2 just by now. And in the next 20 years, this figure is rather expected to go up to 3 billion. So in short, we are actually losing resources that we can recover. We are producing emissions. We are losing employment opportunities. There was a statistic that for every 10,000 tons of waste in landfills, if you were to recycle, we can actually create 10 more jobs. There are health hazards that have been engendered as a result of illegal dumping. There's a lot of ocean litter, which is also one of the rising concerns. Now, we all know that waste as such is directly proportional with income. So countries, advanced economies with higher economies tend to be more inclined to produce more waste, which is especially the case with Luxembourg. Almost about 700 kilograms per capita is kind of the amount of waste that's being generated. So, the ideal situation for advanced countries that have the most efficient waste management infrastructure in place have these essential elements going on for them. They have no illegal dumping. They have waste-to-energy plants, recycling, composting, incentives for renewable energy, and the list goes on. So whenever you have got waste, first of all, we want to separate the organic part, and you can use it for composting. Then you can look for aluminium, plastics, glass, steel, anything that you can use to recycle. And then the amount of waste which otherwise cannot be recycled is usually sent for incineration. And only the ones that cannot be incinerated then is often at times sent to landfills. But in Europe, we are seeing a trend where countries are going towards zero landfill levels. We talk about Germany, Denmark, and Switzerland, that they tend to have the waste which otherwise could not be recycled be incinerated. So they have reached up to zero landfill levels because their claim is that by burying waste down below underneath the surface, it just produces a whole lot of carbon emissions, and which is rather a big problem. And we see in European countries, they're spending close to 150 euro per capita. That represents almost 1.1% GDP per year, which is, even though it's not more than 3 cups of coffee, but compared to European standards, this is the amount of money which needs to be spent. Compare that to Jakarta, where there's just 50 cents being spent a month. We can see canals being full of waste. There's burning litter, and the situation is just not in the best efficient. It's not being handled or dealt with effectively. Even in Italy, there are just some 5,000 illegal dumping sites. So now we come to the developing countries like Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, SAARC, Bhutan, Maldives. I mean, they represent China. They represent close to about 4 to 5 billion people in population. And in developing countries, we have open dumps, uncontrolled landfills, which happen to be the order of the day. There is no proper collection system. There is no proper recycling mechanism, no incentives for renewables. And collection, like I said before, is a huge challenge. You can see copper wires being burned in open. Places like, even in Pakistan, I mean, in Nairobi in Pakistan, the waste which is not collected is oftentimes thrown, as you can see in the slide picture, where you have big trash cans and litter is just thrown around. People actually eat from them because they have no other means to secure their own livelihood. And that, as a result, not just gives rise to so many diseases, but according to one recent study, the amount of waste which doesn't go collected, it just affects so many days, working days of people. So it affects not only the health, but it also affects the economical perspective as such. So if you look at the problems with respect to urbanization, this again is beginning to be a problem. If you look at the slide in France, in 1896 the population stood at about 40 million, which has risen to 65 million by 2013. In Pakistan, it was 36 million in 1948. In 2013, reached to 183 million, and it is expected that the figure would go up as much as 234 million in 2030, which just tends to show in developing countries either people are having just more babies because they have nothing else to do. And there's a lot of load shedding we face. There's almost like 8-9 hours load shedding. So there was a recent study which established that load shedding is responsible, is attributed for a rise in population because people have nothing else better to do when the light goes on. Anyway, so in terms of urbanization, we would come to know that half of the population currently is living in cities worldwide, and that figure is expected to go up to 60 or 70% in the next 20 or 30 years. Now, we have megacities which are growing without planning, without capacity of city authorities to plan for people to go. People are just migrating like anything to urban areas. About 300,000 people a day are migrating, which comes about 2 million people a week. And so it puts a lot of strain on public infrastructure in terms of public service, in terms of public health, and so on. So now we come to the issue and the model of Pakistan. I'm sure all of you are feeling a bit depressed about all the news that I have shared, but it gets worse because I have yet to discuss Pakistan. So in Pakistan, normally this illegal dumping, as you all know, it refers to the practice of discharge of waste in an unpermitted area. Now, it also is referred to midnight dumping because people used to do it at the very early hours in the morning or at late at night. So the concern is to avoid any kind of apprehension. In Pakistan, that is not the case. People do it all the time in open daylight. So in short, we don't call it midnight dumping, we just call it dumping because it's not specific against any time frame. In Pakistan, as you can see, the rate is about 56,000 tons per day of solid waste. Waste collection comes to about 51 to 69% in cities. We have open dumping, open burning, unengineered sanitary landfilling. If anyone is wondering, open dumping and open burning, so people bother to take and transport the waste to a specific location, but they don't bother to actually bury it. So it stacks up in heaps. And then some Einstein comes up with the idea, why don't we just burn it so that we can actually place more, which only makes or causes even more problem. And we should be concerned because, like I said before, it's not just diseases, environment, resource, future costs. A lot of things as such would be affected. Now let me come to the law point. So as Asli pointed out, that in the Iranian constitution, I think she referred to Article 50, which envisages and provides a provision for right to environment. However, in Pakistan, in our constitution, similar to US constitution, we don't have any specific article which provides for a right to environment. And even in the international law scenario, when the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights came about, or the Covenant of Political and Economical Rights came about, there was no mention of provision for right to environment. And so the journey actually started in 1972 from Stockholm Conference, and people actually got together, sat across the table, and actually discussed the need for energy and environment protection and preservation. And then the ideas further developed in the Rio Conference 20 years following the Stockholm Conference. And then it further was established in the Rio Plus 20 Conference in 2012. But if you look at even history, the right to common use of natural resources was rather something which was recognized even in the ancient civilizations. In Roman law, the air, the flowing water, the sea, it all belonged to people for common good. So if you harmed them, you actually violated public trust. And the Roman courts protected waterways using public trust doctrine. And this doctrine is still applicable in countries like India, the United States, Indonesia, Pakistan, and so forth. In Pakistan, since we have three constitutions, Constitution 1956, 62, and 73. But in all three constitutions, the framework, the forefathers, or just the framework people, were not so much too particular about the need for having environment or it be given a specific article. However, there was a law which was passed in 1993, the Pakistan Environment Protection Ordinance. It didn't address the concerns, and following that, we had issued a new law which today serves as the framework legislation that we have in Pakistan, which is the Pakistan Environment Protection Act 1997. Section 11, I think you all must have by now read that section 11, but I'll just read it. Subject provisions of this act and the rules and regulations No person shall discharge or emit or allow the discharge of emission of any effluent or waste or air pollutant or noise in an amount, concentration, or level which is in excess of national environment quality standards or where applicable. So there were these national environment quality standards, and they have been set up by different federal and provincial environment agencies. So in terms of case law, as I said before, that we don't have any specific article. There was a famous case of Shelazia versus Wabda, and Shelazia was a pregnant woman, and she filed a petition before the Supreme Court in public interest litigation, claiming that the Wabda was an agency that was setting up an electromagnetic grid station. It's a power grid right next to her house, and she was pregnant, and she claimed that the electromagnetic waves could have an effect on the health of the unborn child. And even though it was not clear whether there was any such relationship, the Supreme Court decided to support and side with Shelazia. And we have a specific Article 6 in the Constitution. Actually, it's Article 9, which says that no person shall be deprived of life or liberty save in accordance with law. So the definition of life came under discussion in this case. And the court held that life didn't just mean some vegetative existence or a mere animal existence from start to death, but it also included the right to a healthy environment and all such amenities and facilities that came alongside. So then there were many other cases in jurisprudence which was established. There was a famous polythene bag case. Polythene, as many of the attendees would be aware of, it was a shopper bag which was used in circulation. But the problem with polythene bag was that it was not biodegradable, and you couldn't incinerate it. If you did, it would release a lot of toxin gases. You couldn't dump it, you couldn't do anything. And so this case highlighted the importance of when the courts should just impose complete ban on certain materials because they think that they're not environment friendly. There was another nuclear waste case where nuclear discharge was being dumped on the coastal lines of Balochistan because, in the form of landfills. But it again raised questions that it was affecting the health of the people living nearby. Then there was a famous River Ravi case. There's a famous River Ravi in Lahore, and people just have this practice of throwing their waste and dump it in the river, thinking that the river just would clean itself. And the courts have come to adopt a practice which is called as that it's not just the proceedings aren't just adversarial, they're rather inquisitorial. That is to say, the judge is more interested in environment justice than justice. That is to say that he would be wanting to provide relief to sections of the community. It's not about one person winning a case against the other. And so in this case, like in many other cases, the practice is that a commission is usually established, and that commission is interested with the task of seeing of what can be done to improve the situation. And I hope you can all hear me because there's a little bit of noise I can hear. Anyways, I'll just proceed onwards. Hello?
I can hear you well.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah. Now, there's another concern that's going on. I'll give an example of the United States, that more than half of the United States waste is actually dumped in landfills, and 12% is burned, of which only a portion is actually used for energy. And according to United States Environment Protection Agency, landfills happen to be the largest source of methane. And so the trend has somewhat undergone a variation in Europe, where they are placing more interest on incinerators because they have gone to zero landfill levels. However, there's another problem which is brewing up in between recycling and incineration. There's a somewhat of an overlapping, because incinerators cost way too much. They cost $150 to $300 million if you want to have waste to energy plants also set up alongside. And they have these long-term contracts, and there has to be guaranteed amount of waste that they require and need, which doesn't encourage recycling, but rather discourages them. It encourages people to create more and more waste. And so, according to certain studies, without incineration, recycling rate could actually go up. And there are certain countries like Sweden, Germany, and Netherlands, and Denmark that are actually importing waste from other countries because they need to turn a bit of profit. So as a form of solution, if I could recommend, I would just take a few more minutes. In a country like Pakistan or Iran, where we don't have the resources to actually buy such an expensive incinerator, which would have a waste to energy plant attached to it, and we understand or acknowledge that landfills are contributing to methane gas, what we could do is that we could have these specific countries that have got these big plants pay for the shipment, that we could put all this trash in containers and they can pay for the shipment. So this way they can actually burn them, convert it into heat, electricity, turn profit. We can get rid of our trash and we don't have to incur any sort of cost there being. And so at the end of the day, it's really about promoting sustainable development. That is to strike a balance between recovering energy and recovery of materials. And in the end, before I just end, I would like to share an example of sustainability. You know, it was there was a famous king, Henry VIII, and he's also got a sitcom serial which came out, and he was probably one of the first kings to have instigated the first piece of green legislation. And so he wanted to build certain ships, but shipbuilding needed vast amounts of wood. And so he realized at some point that creating his fleet was putting too much strain on the natural supply of wood, particularly oak. And if something had not been done, he would run out of timber, the country would run out of timber. And so in 1543, he created a law known as the Preservation of Woods Act, which stated that if any number of mature oak trees was cut, 12 had to be left standing, and none could be touched before they had reached a certain maturity. So in short, I guess in the end, we must strike a balance between keeping the Earth's natural resources intact and yet of sustaining humanity on its renewable income. And so only by encouraging sustainable sort of recycling, incineration, landfills combination, we can have a better shot at combating the concern, the problem of illegal dumping. And with that said, I would turn the mic back to Michelle.
Great. Thanks very much, Taimur. I like how you started off putting it in the global context and also at the end coming to very much transnational solutions for what I had the perception of it often being a national or local issue, but drawing it into the wider international context. So I've got a few questions of my own, but I will throw it open to the rest of the group. I'll try and unmute everyone's microphone. In the meantime, while I'm doing that, any questions for Taimur?
Hello.
Hi Moses, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
Great. I'll soon pass over to Moses, but I think we've got a question for Taimur.
Well, that was a nice presentation. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. What I would like him to give us a bit is case studies, like any case studies that we might have in his possession.
Taimur, any examples of particular regions where do you think the issue is particularly
sure.
particularly bad, or?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I did walk through some of the judicial judgments that came about. I'm not sure if Moses was online at that time, in terms of the cases which were brought before the honorable courts in High Court under the jurisdiction in public interest litigation, how the courts came out in setting up a commission that could study the effect and impact of illegal dumping. For instance, the River Ravi, where people were dumping and there was discharge of toxic elements and industrial dumping also in the river, and people were just not noticing it. And then it's when the courts take notice of this issue, they send notices to all the concerned parties, the government, the public, local government, the Tehsil municipal administration, the polluters in charge, the public at large. There's going to be public hearing, a commission is going to sit down, they're going to assess the situation in view of all the evidence and all the situation, and then the committee actually gets to give its recommendations to court. In Pakistan, we have a sort of a very litigation-oriented sort of a country. If there's any problem, we just go right knocking on the doors of the courts, and this is where the courts come in. And in this case, what they did was the commission reported back that as far as factories were concerned, they needed to set up filtration plants. In terms of the public throwing litter, we need to put in place a mechanism, a police enforcement mechanism. They created a law that forbid or made it criminal and illegal to throw litter into the sea. And so if anyone was caught doing so, he would be held accountable for. And so by having this sort of a solution that required contribution from all segments of the society, we have now seen much improvement come about with the preservation of local river Ravi, just to give an example. And similarly, at any time, whether it's carbon emissions or whether it's the use of poisonous fertilizers or any sort of mercury-bearing components that have an adverse impact, I mean, then courts are usually inclined to take cognizance of the matter and handle it there and then.
Oh,
Great. Thanks, Taimur. I can sense that there's a lot that we could take into our discussion at the end. So that's our one question at the end of each presentation. What I'll do now is I'll change over to Moses so we can hear about the Kenyan context. And yes, for everyone else listening, save up your questions for what looks like it's going to be a really interesting discussion. So Moses, can you, good, great, I can see your screen. So while Moses is setting up his PowerPoint, I'd just like to say again a very big thank you for Moses for bringing this issue to attention. And as you will hear, I'm sure, what was the impetus for focusing on the issue of illegal dumping was a particular case in Kenya which involves hazardous waste. And so Moses will give us a little bit of the international context, but also the issues on the ground. So before Moses starts, I'd like to give him a little bit more of an introduction because, like our other speakers, he also has a very interdisciplinary background, including a BA in public administration and geography from the University of Nairobi and a postgraduate diploma in international environmental law from the United Nations Institute for Training and Teaching. And his consultancy work spans many areas, including environmental governance and security, as well as biodiversity and ecosystem protection, but also climate change, hazardous waste, and sustainable land use planning. So I know you will all join me in welcoming Moses. Welcome, Moses.
thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Actually, the discussion on illegal dumping of hazardous wastes is a very serious international environmental issue that has got global and local dimension. So I just want to give you an outline of what I want to present to you. First, I'll take you through the background, and secondly, I will discuss about international framework, and the third point I will discuss will be legal and regulatory instruments in Kenya. Then I will talk about selected hotspots in Kenya and challenges. Then I will give you the way forward. So in terms of background, I would like just to mention a few. One, about definition, because we must understand what we deal with. Hazardous waste, as I have defined it, is waste that poses substantial or potential threats to public health or the environment for long term. And illegal dumping is simply the deliberate or unauthorized disposal, tipping or burying of mass waste on non-designated areas. Non-designated means an area that is not legally authorized to consume such wastes. Then this problem of illegal dumping of hazardous wastes is global in nature. I mean, it affects both the developed and the developing countries in different dimensions. When I talk about international instruments, I mean the international legal frameworks. And we basically have three major international frameworks that are in place. First, we have the Basel Convention on the Control of Transboundary Movement of Hazardous Wastes and their Disposal. We have the Rotterdam Convention on the Prior Informed Consent, procedures for certain hazardous chemicals and pesticides in international trade. And we have the Stockholm Convention on persistent organic pollutants. Actually, now when I talk of Basel Convention, I will not go into details, but you can basically go into the website. And but Basel came because there was already concern at the international level regarding illegal dumping of hazardous wastes in certain parts of the world. There were complaints in Nigeria, there have been complaints in Somalia and various places in the world. That is why the Basel Convention came into place. The prior informed consent just deals with that legal framework upon which countries can, the exporting and the importing countries can agree mutually on the procedures to be followed and the capacity that is there in place to manage these hazardous wastes. Then we have the third one, which is persistent organic pollutants. This was entrenched. It became into force in 2004, and basically deals with chemicals and other organic pollutants, and these are the ones which also cause climate change. So in Kenya, when I talk of Kenya, because I want to contextualize my presentation basically for the Kenyan case. At the framework, we have the Environmental Management and Coordination Act, which was gazetted in 1999. It provides the entire framework of sound environmental management in Kenya. And it also establishes an authority that specifically deals with environmental management. It's called NEMA, or National Environmental Management Authority. So NEMA basically deals with all issues pertaining to environmental management in Kenya. It is the sole authority that deals with that. So under this act, now just to give you a brief introduction to the act so that you understand it on the Kenyan context. Section 91 of this act provides the characteristics of hazards. And these characteristics are very broad in terms of their nature, composition, and also their impacts on human health and the environment. Actually, the Act prohibits importation, exportation, or transportation through Kenya of hazardous waste, substances, and chemicals without valid permit issued by NEMA. This is in compliance to the Stockholm Convention on Prior Informed Consent. So it's already entrenched under the NEMA Act. Section 93 of this Act prohibits unauthorized discharge of hazardous wastes. It provides for polluter to pay for their damages. Actually, this one is a provision that ensures that the originator of these wastes, in case has been charged, then he will bear the full cost of managing the wastes and ensuring that the environment has been rehabilitated back to its original nature. Section 94 of the same Act requires NEMA to establish standards. This is where the problem is, because these standards relates to pesticides and other chemicals. And these pesticides must also follow certain procedures. In fact, NEMA has to do regular checks on commodities in the market to ensure that they do not have certain level of concentration of pesticides. However, this is where the challenge is, because until today, NEMA has never establish these standards. And it is because of the complex nature surrounding uh, sorry, Section 95 imposes a requirement for registration of pesticides and toxic substances. This has been contentious as there already exists Pest Product Control Act. And this Pest Product Control Act is managed under the mandate of the Ministry of Agriculture under the Agriculture Act. And you can see now where the legal contradiction comes in, because if NEMA insists on creating its own pests product control, it will have conflict with an existing law under the Ministry of Agriculture. And this one poses a challenge in enforcement. Under Section 92 and 147, the Minister responsible for environment made waste management regulation under Environmental Management and Coordination, Waste Management Regulation 206. These ones were already entrenched. And it is actually a parallel legal structure that deals specifically with hazardous waste management in Kenya. And just to give you a brief about the relation between Kenya and the international, is that Kenya has not yet ratified the WCEL Convention. And the reason is very simple. The Kenyan government had issues with the contention with the prior informed consent. Prior informed consent was previously under the WCEL Convention. Then it was entrenched under the Rotterdam Convention. And this is where most African countries had a problem, because it was very difficult to enforce the prior informed consent, and most African countries had a challenge in managing it. And that is why most African countries decided to have the Bamako Convention in 1991, which simply says that hazardous wastes cannot be imported into Africa, but allows its movement within African countries. And this is where the shipping gap is, because when you allow this waste to be imported and transported within African countries, and yet it is very clear most of these hazardous waste are not generated in Africa, then you create a problem in terms of implementing the rules of origin. Now let me tell you shortly about the hotspots, the areas that we feel are so much facing this problem in Kenya. First and foremost is that since NEMA was created, they have not done any baseline survey on hazardous waste disposal in Kenya. And that is also a problem, because if you do not have a baseline survey study, then you cannot deal with a problem that you do not know its margin, its magnitude. And I've selected these hotspots because of various reasons. One is because of the evidence of verification of toxic disposals. So in Kenya, we have got basically 4 areas that have serious challenges in terms of hazardous waste in Kenya. We have the coastal strip of Kenya. It is the port of entry to Kenya, managing cargo en route majorly to Eastern Congo, Rwanda, South Sudan, and Uganda. Cases reported include illegal shipment of e-waste, biomedical, discharge of hazardous wastes to the marine ecosystem, and oil spillage. We have a second area called Wajir and Mandera. These are areas that are close to each other. And the problem that happened in this area is that over 2 decades ago, there was a cartel that actually was importing hazardous wastes. And there have also been allegations that some of this hazardous waste could be nuclear wastes. And these wastes were dumped into a well in these areas. And that area has been surrounded, it has been protected, but the people around that area have been facing a lot of increased cancer cases and skin diseases. And also because this area is semi-arid, they depend on underground water. This water has already been contaminated, and there is elements of environmental degradation. It's very difficult to access these areas because they are very remote, and they are also having security challenges because of its proximity to Somalia. Then we have the fourth area, Kitengela. Kitengela, what happened? Kitengela is just around 50 kilometers from the capital city of Nairobi. And in Kitengela, in 1967, it was created, it was a place that the facility for storage of pesticides was established. And most of the pesticides that were being stored in this place are aldrin, dieldrin, edrin, and furadan. Actually, these pesticides were being imported into Kenya by farm machinery. This is an American agrochemical company, and it was importing these pesticides in East African region, knowingly that they were highly restricted pesticides in the world. This facility falls under the mandate of the Ministry of Agriculture in Kenya. And because of the problems that the community were facing and the pressure from the community, in 2005, the International Persistent Organic Pesticides Committee organized a study in Kitengela. And they came up with a report. And in that report, it revealed, among others, incidences of respiratory diseases, emission of irritating pungent smell, skin ailments, and death of livestock was prevalent in the area adjacent to this obsolete pesticide site. These pesticides, until today, they are just stored there. The government has got any plan of discharging them. They do not have any mechanism of dealing with them. So they are just in this site. They have been locked in, and there is already urbanization around the area, and most people are building their houses in areas adjacent to this facility. And the challenge cannot be underestimated because of the kind of pesticides and the chemicals that are stored there. So we have some few challenges in Kenya in terms of managing hazardous waste. The first one is compliance and enforcement. And this one is because of conflicting statutory arrangements. For example, NEMA does not have a police force. It has to depend on the Kenya Police Service, and the Kenya Police Service does not have a specialized unit to deal with environmental management. We do not have a specialized, like we have several agencies within the police that deal with specialized crimes, but we do not have any specialized institution within the police that is trained and purposely dealing with hazardous wastes. And we also have conflict in terms of managing chemicals, because the Ministry of Health, where the Pharmacy and Poisons Board is is one of its line department, is the one that licenses these pests and also poisons and chemicals in Kenya. So NEMA does not have any framework on how it can regulate something that is being managed by another statutory. Oh, thank you. Then we have the Kenya Post Authority, we have the Kenya Revenue Authority, and the Director of Public Prosecutions. Secondly, the challenges penalties that are imposed are very lenient and perceived to enable, not to deter, the prevalence of these disposals. Third is because there is very poor or low public awareness and participation in reporting cases of hazardous wastes in Kenya. This is because sometimes when the public make reports to the authority, actually NEMA does not have their offices in many parts of Kenya. So the nearest place the public can report such crimes is the Kenya Police. And because the Kenya Police does not have the capacity to manage this kind of crimes, then most of these cases are actually they don't get the limelight. Then there is an element of corruption, and lastly, it's because of the international trade economics. Most of the producers of hazardous wastes actually, because of the costs of recycling or managing these wastes in their countries, find it easier, should they have an opportunity, to transport these materials to a costless dumping environment. And this is a challenge in terms of international trade economics. So I have some pictures of, this is just a plant in Mombasa where a lot of e-waste has been dumped. And most of this e-waste, there is no protection. You can see these people are just moving around looking for any scrap metal they can maybe sell and get some money. These are poor people.
Moses, sorry to interrupt. Could you put it onto slide mode so we can have a better look at those photos?
On a slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you go to slideshow at the top of the screen. Yeah, that'd be great. So from current slide.
Okay, 1 minute. Is that okay?
Yes, that's looking much better. Thank you.
Okay. So as you can see, these are just e-wastes that were brought into the country disguised as electrical accessories. And the moment these people got their way into the country, they just dumped them in an open field. And as you can see, there are lorries transporting these materials to these dumping grounds, and there are people who are actually moving around trying to get anything from it. This is the same problem also. You can see these were disguised as second-hand clothes, and they were caught at the port of Mombasa. You can see they are well packed, and it's a huge consignment of e-waste. You can see this small boy trying to carry some material in the box. Actually, most of these kids are from poor backgrounds, and you can see the kind of waste. These are actually e-waste materials, and some are chemicals which their content is not well known. And this problem is basically also in Mombasa. This one you can see, these are NEMA officers who had arrested a container which was imported from the UK. And the container, as you can see, Anna, Anna, hello?
Can you hear me all right?
Oh, okay. There was
It
noise.
looks like it's better.
So, yeah, so in conclusion, there is a need to form an epistemic group. This is a global society of people of like mind with global outreach to focus on monitoring and reporting of this problem, because we have the source of this problem and we have the destination. So if we form a body or an organization that specifically will be dealing with this problem, it will it will be it will be a very good step forward. More need to be done at the regional level of EU and AU and other bodies in order for enforcement to be made, because these bodies have got frameworks in there, like EU has got specific protocols and guidelines on the transport and importation of e-waste within the EU. So this one should extend to other regions so that there is proper enforcement of these kind of regulations. There is also need for capacity building in most developing countries to enable them deal with illegal dumping of hazardous waste. As you can see, most of these uh, countries in the developing world do not have the capacity, the training, the personnel to deal with hazardous waste, because this is something that is developing, and this profession is still very, it has got low absorption in terms of personnel. Then there is need for research in order for this research is basically to develop baseline survey so that people are aware and they are able to know where these toxic wastes were dumped, what is the magnitude, what impact do they have, and also this can also inform public policy in terms of sustainable land use planning, so that people can be directed not to either construct houses or have any agricultural activity around or close to these areas. Then last, this is now the documentary that prompted me to make this presentation. As you can see, this the website down there, you can just Google it at your own time, then watch it. This was a documentary that was done actually to bring into light the imminent problem of illegal dumping of hazardous wastes in Kenya. So you can clearly watch it. Then from there you can have a gist of what we are talking about in terms of the problem in Kenyan context. I do not have much unless someone has a question, then we can move forward. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Moses. It's also really interesting to see how the discussion has now shifted from just, in many ways, household waste, but what you're presenting is more the hazardous waste issue, where the
Yeah.
actors are not local either, but international actors have such an important role in what's going on. What I'll do is, if anyone has a specific question for Moses. If not, I'll take kind of the chair's prerogative. And I do have a question, Moses, about the Bamako Convention, because it seems in many ways, for want of a better word, crazy that they've not filled that gap that allows for the movement of hazardous waste within Africa. Is that correct? Is my understanding of what you were saying correct?
Yeah,
And
sure. The Bamako,
yeah.
the,
So
the
my
Bamako
specific
Convention.
question was, does that also mean that richer countries within Africa are moving their waste to less well-off countries?
Uh, my response is because there has not been well-documented cases, and secondly, there is a problem on the rules of origin, because some of these waste will come from other places. Some of them will be generated in Africa by
Hello.
hello?
Keep going, Moses.
Yeah, some of them will be generated by industries that have been set by international actors in some developing countries. Then this waste will find their way moving from one country to the other. So that is the challenge with that convention.
And are there any kind of measures to address this issue?
As at now, there are no measures, proper measures to address this. That is where the problem is.
Interesting. Thank you. So if anyone has questions for any of our presenters, now all the microphones are open, so hopefully that doesn't create too much feedback. But what it means is we can have a discussion amongst all our presenters as well as our attendees on the really interesting issues that have been raised today. Well, while you're waiting, I've got a question for all of our panelists, and the question is where the overlap between what is a legal and a challenge of illegality in terms of the dumping, and on the other hand, an issue of planning, because it seems that of the issues you've all raised, whether it be waste management and waste collection that Asli and Taimur talked about, or the issue of housing, the planning of housing in the case studies that Moses described. It seems like some of the issues aren't because it's something illegal that's occurred, but more a challenge of planning. So if any of our presenters would like to address that issue.
Yeah, I can talk about it in terms of we have a problem in terms of compliance. One is compliance and enforcement of these rules, and secondly, it's because of poor spatial planning. So these are challenges that can be managed if there is proper sustainable land use planning, and this will go a long way, so that in case the government or any actor would like to deal with this hazardous waste, they will be able to know how to deal with them, where to dump them. There are designated areas, and that is another challenge, because as at now in Kenya we do not have any designated location to manage hazardous waste. So when someone brings hazardous waste, simply this person is taking this waste for dumping in undesignated area. So even if the law is there, NEMA has regulations, but because these people, the economics of international trade, they want to make money, or reduce the cost of doing their business, it will be cheaper for them to go to any idle land and throw the waste there and move away.
I'll now move to Asli on the issue of planning, because it struck me when you were talking that is it perhaps the fact that international sanctions are restricting the amount of resources available to address the issue before it occurs as much as the other illegal dumping? I mean, the illegal part of dumping rather than, and the planning related to the waste management side.
At first, I want to make it clear that everything, every single thing in my country is under the effects of sanctions. Because even the water we are drinking is somehow under the effect of politics.
Right.
For this reason, we have many problems in planning, management system, everything, and for some weakness in the management system is related to political issues such as sanctions, but the main issues here are that environmental laws and regulations suffer from a lack of proper adherence and enforcement. This deficiency is mainly due to this fact that legislative objectives in most cases remain unachieved. Enforcement is mainly superficial and insignificant, and unreasonable delay exists between non-compliance and enforcement, and available punishment for non-compliance is inadequate. Injured parties are not properly compensated, and almost all environmental crimes receive no punishment. One of the main issues which recently has attracted the attention of environmental lawyers and Iranian environmentalists is environmental crimes of state companies, especially the ones active in field of oil and gas industry. Oil-rich regions of Iran suffer deeply from oil and gas extraction and transportation side effects, especially the usual practice of illegal dumping and improper handling of the oil and gas-related wastes. Powerful criminals, of course, they need powerful, strict law and enforcement. This is what we lack here.
Interesting. Taimur, are you seeing kind of a similar situation in Pakistan in terms of the planning aspect?
Well, I think that what you have said, mentioned before, definitely raises a lot of concerns. But I have a general observation to make.
Yeah.
I think that 20 years back, 30 years back, there was a lot of trash, rubbish, heaps of waste just dumped around the corner, and nobody was doing anything about it. And it's mainly because in developing countries, we already have so many problems. I mean, like in Pakistan, the biggest problem I think we're facing now is people making more babies than throwing litter around. And so the government already has too much on its plate. So illegal dumping really doesn't register that high on that agenda for the government to do something. However, in the late 20 years, we have seen a different trend emerging. What we have seen is that if the economical incentive brews out of something, people all of a sudden become interested. This is something that we have seen firsthand. Now, for instance, at first people just thought of waste or rubbish just as nothing, just some undesirable article that they want to get rid of. But over the years, people have come to learn that we can actually make some money off it. And so the people who are scavengers and who want to separate the organic materials or plastics, aluminium, steel, glass, or anything that they can actually recycle, they actually make money. So this trash waste management system, in effect, is creating jobs. So whether it be recycling, whether it be composting, whether it be landfills, and even if we are to engage in certain public-private partnerships, developing countries could secure loans from international institutions, could set up good, efficient waste to energy plants. So that, as such, if you create the economical incentive, apart from planning, people would be drawn to it. And as far as planning is concerned, I think in the trend that people are migrating from rural areas to urban areas, we could actually, in India, certainly, where the sense of migration but the government the sort of facilities, provision of those facilities in the rural areas, so that people wouldn't have to migrate just because they want to secure good jobs in Delhi or in some of the big metropolitan cities. And by ensuring quality of standards to be sort of maintained at the rural levels, we can at least ease the bit of migration, which already puts too much pressure on the constraint resources of any city or municipal administration. And in terms of planning, I think that when you have an economical incentive and there are proper teams that would be assigned the task of collecting waste, of recycling waste, of discharging it at landfills or incinerating it, it would create jobs. People would be drawn to it, and if people make money off it, then you would see more and more clean environment.
Interesting. And it's also interesting the point that it seems like the gap that's being filled in an absence of governance in terms of the entrepreneurial spirit of people themselves identifying what could be a economic benefit to them personally.
Yeah, sure.
Yep, go ahead,
Sure.
Moses.
This is where I brought the issue of international trade economics. You see, if most of these countries have been trained on the capacity to manage, even creating a recycling industries in most of these developing countries, then it is a way of creating jobs other than dumping these people on undesignated land. So it will create jobs in most of these countries, and people will want to bring more so that they can. We have also e-waste management, because this is also now becoming a problem in Kenya. But if these people who generate this waste, maybe it is so costly for them to recycle them in their countries, and they can create capacity and infrastructure in these developing countries to recycle this waste at a cheaper price, but in a more environmentally free way, then it would be much better managed. Because the problem is, even if the regulations are there, but we are dealing with economic sense, and people would like to save as much money as they can. But even if you save money, we should also remember that we need that environment for us to make that money. So that is where the environmental economics come into play. Let us develop capacity in most of these developing countries, create industries or institutions that can manage these wastes, then let it not be toxic, so that it can be reduced and even can be recycled into something else that can be of benefit to these people, other than harming their life and the environment.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions for our panelists?
Yeah, I would like to make a further observation if I
Yes,
can.
thanks.
So if we have three countries right now: Kenya, Iran, and Pakistan. And if a really nice waste-to-energy power plant incinerator cost about $150 million, maybe all three countries could sanction off a program, and we could set up one really giant waste-to-energy plant, maybe in Iran, which is midway between Pakistan and Kenya. And so any trash which is left outstanding out of recycling, we can just ship it to Iran. Iran makes money, we get rid of trash, and maybe if Iran is generous, it could share the proceeds, and we could also share some profits in Kenya and Pakistan.
Yeah, why not bring in other countries at the same time?
Yeah, sure. Australia could, spearhead the whole campaign.
Yeah. So kind of a
And
regional,
and
but
then
not.
all of us would also have very good jobs then.
Yes, employment generation and all the other benefits as well.
Sure.
Does anyone have any other questions for our panelists? Anything, any of our attendees, like either clarification, comments, questions?
I have a question. Is there any chance of exchanging the slides between the panelists and attendees?
Yeah, so I have both your slides, Asli, and Moses' slides, and Taimur, if you don't mind, if you could send through your slides as well.
Yes, I'll do that just now.
And yeah, I'll circulate that, as well as I'll see whether the program's recorded. I've pressed record, but if the recording comes through, I'll send that through to the rest of the group as well.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question if no one
Yeah.
is about to ask a question.
Yes.
So this question is for you, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
So how does the Australian government see this trend, this situation of waste and dump, and what sort of effective mechanism has it adopted that perhaps developing countries could actually apply and start building off on their progress and their good success?
The answer to that question probably is I'm not the right person to ask. Waste management's not my area at all.
Okay.
But
I mean, in terms of illegal, like their means of combating or addressing the issue of illegal dumping.
yeah,
Like,
in
what's
many ways, it's not a key environmental issue in Australia. I think because in terms of waste collection, that's done by the city councils, and it's dealt with quite well in terms of it's that easy to dispose of household waste that there's no real incentive to take it out into the bush or anything like that. I think perhaps, and this is just speculating as well, perhaps there might be a bit more issue in bigger items where some council tips charge money for people to bring their waste, kind of larger household waste like furniture and that sort of thing. I think that might be a little bit more of an issue, but it's not something that's very much on the public's consciousness. And in terms of the legislative framework, to be completely honest, it's not something I know anything about. That's why it's really interesting to hear how things occur in other countries, and perhaps that's why my interest in the planning side of things, because in the Australian context, it's not a huge issue. I think my guess would be because the local level councils have their waste management plans in place, and that I wouldn't say eliminates illegal dumping completely, but it means that there's not that much incentive to dump in areas because you could just dispose of your waste quite easily through other means. Okay then. Well, if there's no other questions from either the panelists to each other or from our attendees,
I have
Oh
another
yes,
observation.
yep.
So there's also a concern of attitudes of people, right? So in Australia, in Europe, in America, and some of the other advanced economies, people have it in their attitude that they don't want to just throw litter or rubbish anywhere around, that they would want to follow certain, they want to follow conventional wisdom. They're only going to dispose of trash at specific locations. However, in developing countries, people are used to follow this system. And you see that in their attitudes, that they just have this policy of throwing trash as they go. And so I think that apart from just this governmental intervention or entrepreneurial initiative of making it more economically beneficial, something has to be done in terms of educating the people, in terms of raising awareness of the consequences that throwing trash can have on public health, safety, and quality of life and property. And so how do you think that behavioral change that we so are eager to bring about can take place? If anyone wants to comment.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I think quite a few years ago there was a public service campaign about not littering, not throwing your banana skin out the car window, and that. So some of the points you were bringing up in terms of um, changing behavior through other means other than legal means, through public service announcements and other ways apart from imprisonment that Asli mentioned, or kind of other ways to shift thinking. Okay, so I think we'll leave it there. There doesn't seem to be any more burning questions from our attendees. But
Okay, what I will say
yes,
just to conclude is that we can, in the early career environmental group, we can also create a network of maybe people who are interested in dealing with these hazardous wastes at local and international level, so that the awareness can be created. We have our own reporting system to each other, so that we know what is going on in Iran or wherever, so that or Pakistan or in Australia, and how are they managing that situation, so that we have a specific case study that we can also maybe every year we can highlight case studies, and also maybe the best examples, so that people can share this information across the countries and be able to move forward.
yep, great. So what I'll do is when I send out the email to everyone with your slides and hopefully the recording of our webinar, I'll also send out a call for interest in this particular area, and we could possibly create a group within the group, particularly to focus on the issue of dumping and hazardous waste.
Thank you.
Um, can I have a question?
Yes.
Taimur,
Yes.
can you listen? Do you think Islamic teachings can have any effects on environmental protection in Pakistan, including handling illegal dumping?
Okay, my take on
Because
this is that, okay, continue.
Because in Iran, some of our lawyers believe that Islamic teaching can have great effects on environmental protection. Is there a same trend among your lawyers, environmentalists?
Well, we do have Islamic law and Sharia law to some extent. However, the concern is that in matters such as these, when you bring religious perspective in any argument, especially this one, there are going to be a lot of different views that may not necessarily converge. For instance, some ulama might argue that incinerating waste is against Islam, and if that,
Okay.
fatwa comes out, that just destroys our whole understanding of waste management infrastructure. Or some might say that, you want to dump it in landfill. I mean, even though that technically, if you follow and look up the religion, it provides for, and there's specific mention of wanting to have clean and clear environment. So there shouldn't be any restriction. However, it's just that in a country like Pakistan, we have a great deal of issues, and there's a lot of extremism that we also have to deal with. And sometimes the religious clerics have just assumed so much power that it is unfortunately being misused, and this is only causing more and more hardships and problems. And even though I think this would be most welcome to draw lessons, so long as it is helping us advance a cause. But I wouldn't place so much emphasis, or wouldn't be too much um, glad that we would allow uh, clerics with their different divergent views maybe to come in, and I mean, it can go either way. So, hello?
Yeah.
I have your voice.
Okay, so I think that it's good that I think every religion, be it Islam, be it Christianity, be it Judaism, be it Buddhism, I think all great religions provide or have specific mention for the need to protect and preserve. And I don't think there would be any single religion, including the Olympian gods or the Greek gods or the Roman gods or the African gods, that would want waste to be dumped around. And I think that in countries where people are so religious, maybe you're right that that could motivate them to uh, maybe keep trash in check, not out of their own civic duty, but maybe out of their adherence to a religious commitment than anything else.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think I'll wrap it up there. It's interesting that, we've covered so many interesting issues, even now into theology, and also interesting to look at the overlaps between the jurisdictions, and also the range of different approaches that we've covered as well as potential solutions. And I think, Taimur, you better get on to concluding an international agreement, trilateral agreement between your three countries. That does sound like
I should. And maybe we can present it to the IUCN.
Oh, the
Something we can have
Congress
a small
next year.
research.
Why not?
Yes, and this could be our proposal. We could actually ensure the provision of waste in a more efficient manner, and can become more environment friendly in the process.
Transcontinental solutions. I like it. Okay, I will wrap it up here. And thank you all very much for all the effort you've put in, and for just the interesting range of ideas. It's good to see so much insight and expertise within our group. And thank you also to our attendees for sticking with these really interesting issues. What I'll do next is I'll send an email to the whole group with once I have everyone's slides as well as the recording, and hopefully this discussion will continue beyond our webinar. So thank you all once again, and
Thank you so much.
I'll
Thank
talk
you.
to
Thank you so much.
you soon. And thank you again to our attendees and to our presenters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye from Kenya.